Sure. We have also worked with different clients, vendors, although you may understand that for many of the clients that we have worked on, we have really big NDAs, but here you have a hint of which are the big companies that we have also worked with that we don't have that disclosure agreement. And you can see big profiles such Open Robotics for the ROS industry, Telefonica, which is one of the biggest telecom vendors in Spain and I think in the world. And then also big robot manufacturers such KUKA, ABB, and others. So basically, as I was saying, security collaborations, that's another topic in which we are usually really active because we believe that one of the most important parts in security is to actually teach or to show others how the status is so that they can fix and prepare themselves for the future. And here we can see that Alias Robotics has found more than 1,000 vulnerabilities all over different robotic technologies. And we have helped more than 20 companies now to secure robots. And actually now it's 25, but doesn't matter. We have our own database with robot vulnerabilities, which is called RVD, which you have it down in the right. And it was founded by the European Union. We are also a CNA. So basically we have the authority to launch vulnerabilities as one of the parties in Spain, which we are only two, and we are the one that is more focused on the robot vulnerabilities, being experts on that. We have also done several actions in the past. Among them, we have participated in the BLACKHAT, which is the most important security conference in the world. And it's not only related to robot matters, but everything in general. And we disclosed how robots could actually be hacked or how those have problems depending on the bill of materials that they are using. This was really an intuition. It was shocking for the market because they realized that there is not only a software problem over the security, but that how hardware can also affect, which was kind of the new trend that Alias Robotics is trying to explain and show to the world, while in the traditional security, we are considering more software and communication bases. Also, you can see here that we have partnered with one of the biggest security vendors in the industrial area, which are Trend Micro, TX1, Adelink, and others to do this BLACKHAT report and also for other matters. And we are really proud of the work done over that area. For that aim, we also presented a small paper about DDS security, which was really shocking also for the market. As you may know, for all those ROS2 developers, DDS is one of the layers that is being used for communicating different nodes to ensure security upon layers. And Alias Robotics has, together with those companies that I have just shown, encountered more than 12 vulnerabilities affecting to this system that is now being implemented into critical infrastructure. So one of the reactions that people is usually accepting is that if I change all protocols such as CAN, CAN, to newer ones such as DDS that can ensure that security layer, then I'm secure. Well, that's not exactly true. We have to still be patching and solving the problems and security issues that those new protocols do have. And we have to be always checking for this kind of interactions into our CI/CD charts. Basically, for you to know, this DDS project was then analyzed globally to see which infrastructures it could be actually damaging. And we find that at least 100 organizations were using this kind of protocol into an insecure manner that was exploitable. Just as a matter of, or as a detail for you to understand which is the scope of using this kind of technologies that seem to be secure. Although, however, as I was saying, we have to take care of what we are implementing and understand really well which can be the scope of security of those technologies. So basically, one of the main parts that you probably know perfectly is the difference between security and safety. This is a really huge problem in Spain because we use the same word for both nomenclatures. So basically, both of them are security. There is no differentiation between security as technology security for information and safety as the person being affected. So here you can see 3 videos on different robots being hacked by us, just as a matter of a proof of concept. in which, for example, you can see an MIR hitting some object that it was not supposed to be doing so. Then also some ransomwares on the right for different robotic arms. And basically what we want to say with this is that there cannot be ensure any safety if there is no security. How could we actually ensure that the robot is not going to damage its environment if we cannot ensure that the damage can harm the robot? If anyone can affect to the security systems or parameters of the safety configuration of the robot by hacking it, then you cannot ensure safety. And that's something that it's already in the normative, but that we haven't considered security yet to be able to ensure that safety matter. That is the one that worries us the most. Also for you to know, we have a small laboratory there in Europe in which we are showing this kind of security problem with the safety break. It's in Munich. It's also with our collaborator Telefonica, and you can see different robots working together and how those attacks can actually damage those robots, and we can see the impact of security hacks into safety, just for you to know as a point of interest. Okay, let's start a little bit with what the talk should tackle the most, which is the European normative and also how to implement security onto robotics and industrial lines. And here I wanted to bring the security normative for machinery directive, which is at the end affecting to safety components. And now it's starting to introduce also security aspects. So basically, if you look to both the IEC normatives that we have down there, one, the 62.443 is one of the references for Alias Robotics, because we understand that the Section 4 of that normative is pretty complex and understands many of the factors of the security. It states, and it happens the same for all the normatives, that any solution needs to be analyzed previous to being executed. What does that analysis mean? Basically, what it means is that for any device that is in development or production line that is going to be deployed, what we need to ensure is that we understand all the landscape of security that that device or production line has. How can you ensure this? Well, there are different analyses, but threat identification is the first part into anything that has relation to this. And secondly, these new normatives are pointing out that you should do also penetration studies in which you actually identify the specific vulnerabilities of your system. So for anyone, and it's really understandable, it's first understanding what or how my system can be damaged. And secondly, what is really what affects my system that I need to fix. And those are the two, let's say, big areas in which any company which is developing robots or that has implemented robots in their facilities needs to be tackling. If we continue, you'll see that the security has changed completely for robotics, because we started only with having IT areas in our factories in which we have only informational technology, computers, printers, connection to the internet. Then we started to provide cloud, so everything was connected to everything mainly. And then we started to also provide IoT to our factories so they were more smart, trying to implement Industry 4.0, digitalization. And finally, we are implementing all those concepts into robots. Also, what happens is now that we have our robots, devices that were not meant to be connected to any cloud, connected to that cloud. We have also other machinery that is implemented the same way. And we are also developing robots now in the development area, which are being prepared to be connected to these technologies without having done the security analysis that was needed to ensure that that connectivity was not going to harm any environment. Having this in mind, any company which is developing should at least have in mind this kind of cycles. This is called the dev security cycle or operation cycle. And what you have is that whenever you start a plan, what you have to start doing is actually testing your plan. So let's start from the beginning. I have my plan. What should I do? I should start implementing my plan. Once I have my plan, I start the building. So basically, I test that my plan is actually working. And I start with the configuration and deploy. If you see, we are starting to be in this area of the cycle in which yet security has not been implemented. And then I started with monitorization, which is what I was mentioning about the industry or the digitalization 4.0, which starts providing us information. And then we start the retroactive analysis. And we start again planning, coding, building, testing, and configuring our system so that we can ensure that the system is going to work perfectly. And my question here is, why don't we also add security to this life cycle? So basically, if I am ensuring that my system is reliable, that my system can work in any kind of environment, in any kind of situation, why not ensuring also that it can work if a system is hacked? This is something that all cycles are not implementing. That's something that from Alias Robotics we are trying to push, adding this security layer to this operational cycle, which I believe almost any company is implementing, because we all pass through these phases, although it may change a little bit the names internally, but we have to ensure security all over the process. When I'm planning, I should be planning also my security. When I'm coding, I should be coding secure. I should add building and testing accordingly to test the security of my system. When I'm configuring and deploying, I should be checking which could be the threats and anomalies that could affect my system security-wise so that I can prevent them. And afterwards, I should be also active monitoring security and analyzing which are the results of the attackers trying to enter into my system, which that will be the whole setup of security. If you see what I was mentioning before with the normative is actually on the planning coding area. So when we talk about analyzing the landscape and the threats that my system can have, are actually implementing in the first stage of this DevSecOps configuration. Basically, it goes when you are planning the system, you should understand which are the threats that that system may suffer. And there is where you start implementing. Once it is code, in the testing areas where you do the penetration testing so that you can actually understand which is the scope of your system in terms of vulnerabilities to actually be able to replan, recode, and retest in case it is needed. And you haven't yet gone to the deploying of the system. So it's still secure because you haven't put it into production. Then afterwards, you should do also an analysis of the deployment in which your system is going to be deployed and understand if that can actually damage your system itself, apart from the system that has been already security-wise checked. And obviously monetization analysis, but that's a more complex area to be analyzed into security because you should put active components that analyze the security and be able to understand which can be the escapes of the attacker at the time of attacking your system. But nevertheless, there are many steps that should be followed before we get to the monetization and analysis stage. This is the big plan. This is the same as we were seeing before, but with a chart of flow. I believe this is being recorded, so I'm going to try to make these slides available to anyone. And this is just as a plan that anyone can implement. Don't take it as God's word, because at the end is our approximation. You can have one different from ours, and it can be still be good. So the thing is that it's the same plan, but having more considerations into each of the steps. And if you see here, the security is considered because we have flow management is to analyze and understand those vulnerabilities that are affecting our system and that are integrated again into the coding, building, planning section so that we can all the time recycle this system. As you may see, when we enter into monitoring, we will be in the production area. So it's basically when the robot is working. We have also the configuration for deployment, which was when I was talking about where the robot is going to be deployed. And also we have the development, which happens at our places, at our robot manufacturing companies, and also in our own companies in which we are implementing robotic lines. If we are actually developing a robotic line because we want to implement a new technology, that's also our development area. And our deployment area is true that it's our company, but we still need to analyze which is the environment in which that robot or robotic solution is going to be implemented. Finally, we have the production in which the robot should be working forever and ever, hopefully. So common practices, as I was mentioning, and you may have seen, under the common practices, we will see what we believe are the first steps onto security to ensure that security is enforced into those systems. Basically, this is what we believe it's a really good diagram of understanding how our robots should be placed into a network and also into a production line. This diagram is a Purdue diagram. Purdue was one of the defenders of the different security levels and ensured the endpoint protection for each of the robots. So basically what you will see is there are several segmentations, several firewallings, and several infrastructural components that allow you to segment your network to make each of the components on the network secure itself. So basically what it's saying is that on the level 4, we should have an IT, which is cloud connected with the proper security connections to the cloud, and also with a specific firewall so that our systems are not hacked and cannot be damaged. Afterwards, we have DMZ area, which is the demilitarization zone. And what this area means is that it should not be too much connectivity through the IT to the OT area, although we understand that now with the new technologies, this should be at least tackled and have some certain connectivity that allows you to connect your systems. Afterwards, also the same analogous system, firewalling, segmentation, and all kind of configuration into our operational technologies. But afterwards, we enter into what for me it's more interesting, because it's the same, it happens into IT. So basically, if I secure each of my robots and I segment, each of my laptops when I'm in the IT area, and I also, apart from segmenting, I also go and add security to each of my endpoint devices, why shouldn't I do the same into the industrial zone? It's exactly the same. If I am securing a computer, just because that computer has access to the internet or because it has access to a database, and it can be hacked through vulnerabilities that affect to software patches, through vulnerabilities of attackers entering from the outside, through vulnerabilities that it can be the same employee, the one that is generating those, why not replicating this system into the OT environment? So this is what this proposal is about. And basically, we can see that each of the lines should be segmented so that pivoting is not allowed, that each of the robots, controllers, machinery should have its own security system or at least analysis to understand which is the scope of that device being connected to the network. And obviously firewalling and all kind of relatives. Okay, which is the proposal of Alias Robotics in this sense? We propose 3 kind of main components. One of them is threat modeling, which I have gone a little bit about it, also penetration testing and red teaming. I take red teaming and penetration testing as almost the same, but with different objectives. So threat modeling, as I was saying, threat modeling is a theoretical study that anyone can do when it comes to its company. And what it does is analyze all the threats that your system may have. A threat is not a vulnerability. It's just the possibility of an attacker actually damaging your system. It's one of those holes that your system may have, entry points related, in which an attacker can enter from an area B to an area C, and actually, which is the point in which that attacker can generate that attack and which will be the effectance of that attack. So it's understanding where my technology is in terms of vulnerability, but still without detecting any of those vulnerabilities because the system it has not been checked. It's just a theoretical analysis. Secondly, what we recommend is on those security assessments, which go much deeper into vulnerability analyzing, it's penetration testing and red teaming. Penetration testing is trying to find as many vulnerabilities on a system as possible under the scope of a time. So basically you get an attacker on your place trying to hack your system as hard as he can. Red teaming is practically the same, but with a different objective. In that sense, you tell an attacker that you want him to stop a production line, specifically the robot 24 of that production line. And the attacker is able to do with the vulnerabilities that he can or she encounter in the meanwhile, stop that robot. So red teaming is an oriented attack to a system. A penetration testing is trying to find as many vulnerabilities as possible. As you may understand, understanding the scope of security of your devices, production lines is key to actually understand which is the possibility of being hacked. Because we can talk about ransomwares, we can talk about technologies such as Nozomi networks, TX1, and all those that are set into our production lines that ensure security to a certain extent. But those devices do not work if we actually do not understand what we have at home. If we do not understand which are the security matters that worry or that affect our system, we cannot just relay onto a solution that analyzes certain communications, because you may be missing one of the most important parts that actually affect your system that is not being considered. And that's basically because you didn't know. So that's something that we always recommend, doing this kind of analysis to understand better which is the landscape of any company at the time of facing security. Here, what you see is how a threat model could look like for any technology. This is particularly for a robot, but you could see it also for an industrial environment, because at the end, the concept is the same. What you define is different sections. Those are trust boundaries. Those are the areas in which you believe your technology is secure, at least for those components that are interrelating between them. You have these red dots, which are entry points. Those are the points in which an attacker can actually jump from one area to the other, breaking down the security that those areas have. Because if I believe this area has a trust boundary because it's secure itself, but this area may have its own security, but I have an attacker that is able to pass from here to here, both areas in terms of security are compromised, because you should not be able to actually interact from this area to this other area if there is not a mean to do that. You have also concepts such as the threat attacks, in which you can see these lines which are affecting and pointing one to the other. And those ones then are represented as possible threats with a specific naming. So I don't know, a DDoS attack to, a DOS attack to whatever system to make it unable to communicate to the rest, affecting to this trust boundary and the other one, which is over there, or whatever other concept. And this is how a threat model should look like. I have all my components, all the communications that are under those components. So basically how are processes interacting to the other processes, and also understanding which are the vulnerability points or the entry points, better said, on those systems to understand the threats. Endpoint solutions. Here it comes a little bit of what we do in Alias Robotics. I don't mean to lose much time in here, but it's basically for you to understand we have a solution which is called RIS. And that solution, it's an endpoint protection platform that goes installed in each of the robots. It's somehow set and a smart antivirus that goes installed into the different robots to ensure security in the endpoint. As I was saying, ensuring it's a really tough work when we come to security. It helps and provides more security layers to what the robot may have before it was installed the solution. And it helps companies to have a more greater security layer onto their facilities. Basically, this is how it's seen. You have a technology that can be trained, generates a firewall over time, and also has detection and anomaly prevention. The key why I was showing this kind of technology is because if you look at it, it's actually the same as the development of the DevSecOps, because you have a solution which is installed into a product, then that solution learns over the time. So it basically gets the monitoring and the analysis of the DevSecOps part, and it generates some rules. So it's a start on the planning, coding, and building, so that it generates a security layer. But it does not stop over there. Once it has that firewall, which is adaptive, installed, what it does is deploy it. So it basically sets in the system the rules. And once the rules are set, it starts again monitoring from those communications that were allowed by doing artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence starts detecting and monitoring again. And it closes the cycle once the operator checks and performs new actions to what it's around the robot. So basically, if I see an alert from the artificial intelligence that it's telling me that I don't know which machine is trying to connect to my system, and that it's generating certain harm, what I can do is to start planning how to isolate that machine or how to implement new security measures on that machine to implement security over all the system. It was just to have a binding on what I was saying before and solutions that are meant to analyze security in the same way.
Can you round up?
Yep.
Can you finish off, Unai?
Sure.
All right, thanks.
So basically, I think this is out of the scope here, but it's normal analysis that we are doing also for companies. Just analyze, detect, and understand the different technologies and security and components that are affecting to your network. Identification, as I was saying, is the first step, and then performing all security actions. But identifying what you have, that's the most key component over here. Finally, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing me to present this for you today. I hope at least it was interesting. And thank you so much, Ulrich, again, for allowing me being here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Unai. You can hear it, so the appreciation is coming from the crowd here. Just checking, any questions for Unai? Not for the moment, but I'll leave the line open in any case. Okay, so let me get back then to something which is basically going to be very much complementary to what Unai has been presenting here. So in the previous talk, I finished up by explaining to you that a SBOM, it's called, and as an acronym, stands for Software Bill of Materials. It's an official piece of legislation that came out last year in the US by the Biden administration, requiring all parts of software and hardware to be that's sold into the US government that need to include this type of bill of materials. And so I explained to you how it got together. So the last year we've seen the development of these types of concepts, software bill of materials. We started to add to that not only software but also security bill of materials, for the specific reason that it's not only software that needs to be described, it's also the security that needs to be described, which is actually the main purpose of the SBOM. SBOM has been around for more than a decade. It has been developing under a number of administrational bodies in the US, but it started to really pick up speed last year. So beyond the necessity and the requirements from the administration, so the official US administration, it's also picking up speed in Europe, where in Europe we are looking towards regulations which are requiring from vendors to be delivering resilient products. What that specifically is, we yet don't know, because there is a resilience directive, a resilience act in the making. But there's also something that's called the CyberSecurity Act, and that is requiring, in any case already, the setup of guidelines, certifications of different types of devices that need to be cybersecured. But there's other good reasons why to use also a security bill of materials. And it's very much in relation to what I've been explaining in the first part. So it's in relation to, for instance, the supply chain security. When you buy a piece of equipment and you install that, you cannot be held responsible for potential cybersecurity harms that might be causing it. But in the end, you will be the one responsible, because if your production facility stops working because of the cybersecurity infringements, you will of course have to be able to pay whatever damages that it has been causing, and those damages can be quite substantial. On the other hand, the vendor cannot also be held entirely responsible for potential cybersecurity risks, because some of these vulnerabilities, like when I have been showing you, are only appearing after they have been published into the market, after they have been released into the market. But as the example of DDS, the vendor on the DDS, not responding at all to any responsible disclosures that, in this case, Alias Robotics has been presenting them, also together with the industry, alerting that vendor that something really bad is happening with the software, and it's really very much open and vulnerable. They need to do something about this. So it cannot be the fact that that they are not doing anything either. So that's really this joint responsibility that's growing between the vendor of the appliances, of the devices, between the end user, and then potentially also the system integrator that's usually going to install and also maintain this industrial environment. So beyond this, I also indicated this morning, in the earlier session this morning, yes, that it's absolutely necessary to get a good list of assets, to get a good understanding of what you all have. And within that list of assets, it's definitely also useful to understand in the different systems and the machines what different softwares it's being composed out of, because it helps you to better monitor vulnerabilities. For instance, do you know today that in the systems that you're using, which highly likely if you're using robotic systems, you're using DDS, if you are using this particular vendor that Unai has shown you, have you been analyzing this already up front do you have a list of which DDS types of vendors that have been that you are applying? Likely not. So I'm not going to ask you the question, but just think it. Just consider how it should be working. So what's the software bill of materials? It's effectively a list of ingredients or a nested inventory, and it's a formal record containing all of the details of what basically has been delivered in a specific piece of software or in a piece of hardware that usually is also steered by software. So I mentioned this up front as well. When you know that in many organizations, 98% are using some form of open source software, which means that you can use whatever sort of web server, which is typically open source, or you can use something from a GitHub. Normally, you have not checked up front whether those pieces of technology, they've been made cyber secure. And usually what happens is those pieces of open source software are, of course, being scrutinized by the community to find potential vulnerabilities. So we do that with software. We do also do that with hardware. But in any case, it's important that you can manage really who has been doing what exactly in this environment. And so reporting vulnerabilities, making sure that there are safety inspections, that these things are happening for a specific thing. And the thing in this case is usually an industrial machine where you need to understand, okay, what are the potential vulnerabilities like? Now, what does it look like, a bill of materials? It can have many different forms and formats. There's no pre-required standard. There's a number of standards under development. There's like 4 or 5 different of them. But basically, they all do the same. So they help you reporting in a structured format. So it's not that difficult. It's basically, if you like, a short list of what are the ingredients of this thing. And we all can read a menu. We are not all good cooks, likely. In any case, we can read what the ingredients list is. And so we can also compose likely what an ingredients list should be looking like. So the very basic things like, okay, we'll finish in, what is it, 2 minutes? Yeah, 1 minute. So these things will be reported, and from this starting now. Oops, and from this document on, you can actually start creating a JSON file, and the JSON file really helps you also recording all of the different assets that are needed. This JSON file can be exchanged with your customers or with other suppliers and can be further enhanced. So if you basically build a specific system and you say, okay, my components are these and these and these, then the addition to this would then be specifically that you reach out to your suppliers, and that from your suppliers, you get also a list of components that you simply add to the same list. And this list, you then finally deliver into the end user environment that you basically work with. So basically, your customers can consume these software bill of materials and security bill of materials. So there's many different mechanisms to help doing that. Okay, animal is not returning.
No, we have to swap groups.
Okay, so the room is too small, likely, to see animal working. Okay, so we'll join you in the other room for animal. Anyways, that leaves us a couple of additional minutes. So wrapping up shortly, there's much more to this, but very quickly wrapping up. Unai gave you the indicator of what is a security development lifecycle, a software development lifecycle. We really attach ourselves to this with the software bill of materials. And we also build this on top of existing standards, like the NIST cybersecurity standard, which is there to help you identifying specific cybersecurity challenges. And further also, so this is the same 8 symbol, if you like. And so it helps you really to further understand what requirements are needed from a platform or from an industrial environment in terms of components to make it cyber secure. So using the software bill of materials is what I recommend you doing for the next devices that you are building, that you're creating. There's many different tools and solutions and GitHubs out there that can help you doing that. you can reach out to us in order to help you creating those. In addition to that, also start asking your vendors for the bill of materials the next time that you start purchasing, or work together with your purchasing department, with your procurement department, and suggest them to also ask the vendors for a bill of materials. Normally, in Europe, you're going to get the answer from, let's say, the 3 major industrial vendors that they will not be able to give you this, that it's confidential, that they're not able to disclose this to you. Then simply revert to the fact that they need to report this in any case into the US, and that it's going to be in any case a requirement also from European legislation that this needs to be reported. So from the 2 ends, take that into consideration. I'll end with this. We run over for like 5 minutes, I guess, more or less. Thank you very much also for your attention on this part of the session. And if you have any questions, I'll still be here. And otherwise, we all go and seek what nice trajectory that animal has been programmed to do. So thank you very much. Oh yeah, and I still have some stickers on Do Not Trust Robots, if you like. Hey, man. Yeah, thanks. Pleasure. Good. How about you? Visiting some nice places in. Yeah, I usually put them on. Stickers. Thanks. Oh yeah, great. There you go, sir. Thank you. All right. We're going to leave you to it. Thank you. We'll be in touch. You
have a nice day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah.
I don't know if it's Robotics or someone has spray, like we are a frame. I guess that I don't know how do we fit that thing.
We'll meet in the evening. To this dinner.
Might I need to check with home, but
Okay.
Because I need to. I'm driving.
Oh,
I need to be back as well.
car,
Yeah.
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 Here by aeroplane.
You flew. Getting out of your way. Sorry about that. Do you plan to use your laptop?
Yeah, I'll use my.
Okay. Then you might need the HDMI. You need this?
No. Okay. This is a different now. Do they provide sound also?
This is the. You'll have to use this one for the sound.